Motherhood Incorporated proudly presents Military Mom Talk Radio live on TogiNet.com. Co-hosted by Robin Boyd and Sandra Beck, the owner of Motherhood Incorporated. Military Mom Talk Radio is here with a powerful platform for women to discuss their ideas, issues, and concerns with respect to the military lifestyle. Military Mom Talk Radio encourages you to share your experiences of being a military wife and mother. This show is dedicated to educating your family about the many resources that are available in both the public and private sector, and we'll be sharing helpful information from women all over the world. We'll cover everything military, from helping a family member cope with post-traumatic stress disorder, to navigating government programs dealing with family issues, to the struggles of deployment, along with being a working mother both in and out of the home. This is Military Mom Talk Radio, and here are your hosts, Sandra Beck and Robin Boyd.
Hey, military moms, this is Sandra Beck, and I'm here with Robin Boyd, and today we're going to be covering some tough topics. Rob, we're going to talk about grief and how to get through the holidays. Now, we're coming up on the Christmas holidays, but I think this show is very timely, Rob, in that it'll stand for any holiday that you have with respect to grief and the military family, and whether it's a birthday, it could be Easter, it could be whatever holiday is important to you or celebrated in your house. We're going to be talking about the framework of Christmas, and we know that our shows run, 24/7 in perpetuity. So if you're listening today, it's about how to get through any benchmark, really. It could be a wedding anniversary, it could be a birthday, it could be lots of different holidays. But for the sake of today, we're going to talk about Christmas and Thanksgiving and, Hanukkah and those holidays celebrated this time of year that we're doing the recording.
Right. I think Thanksgiving was the one holiday that was the hardest for me after I lost my mom, in that seems to be such a home-centered holiday, even more so than birthdays, because at least on her birthday or on other loved ones that we've had, we still have the same birthday cake that they liked, or we still have a little tradition that sort of brings a smile. But somehow Thanksgiving was the one that gripped me the most. So it's true. It doesn't matter what the holiday is for you personally. It just could be the the first day of the month because you got to do something because the Social Security check came or whatever.
Well, and I love that you put it that way, because it changes, and I will say it changes from year to year. That's the funny thing about grief. Like the first year that my mom was gone, and it's funny, we talk about my divorce too. The first year it was really strange for me, because now birthdays are a huge thing in my house. So the birthday was much harder. Because what's funny is for Thanksgiving and Christmas, I have little kids, so I am so busy. I didn't have any of the grief stuff on the big holidays. It was the smaller, more intimate ones that caused me difficulty. And then what was funny is, as my kids have gotten older, Christmas is less stressful. There's a lot less to do. Yeah. Because I'm not doing a lot of the things I did when they were small. So I feel it more. So it really, it's one of those things where the stuff we're going to be learning and talking about today, it really does change over time, and the situations change, but the stuff we're dealing with doesn't.
And I think, too, when we're talking about grief, it doesn't always mean a death. Although I know Judy Brizendine's book was certainly centered and was written after she had this great loss, but it could be a loss of a former lifestyle. Sometimes when soldiers come back or troops come back, they may have injuries or they may have some difficulties and challenges that bring them to a new life moving forward. They are not always the same. They certainly have their life, but they may have a different life. And I think getting through that is always so challenging.
It is challenging, and I think we should get right to the heart of the matter. I'd like to bring on Judy Brizendine and to have her talk a little bit about her book and her work. She's been a guest on our show before, but for those of you who haven't listened to the episode, you can go back and find it on iTunes. Just go to Military Mom Talk Radio and look up Judy Brizendine. You can also find her on our TogiNet station, TogiNet.com. You can also look on our Military Mom Talk Radio. And again, the name is Judy Judy Brizendine, and we're going to bring her on. She's one of our grief experts, one of our 2 Judys today that are going to talk about grief in the military family. So, Judy, welcome to the show. I'd like you to tell our guests what you do and what your relationship has been with the military. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's great to be back again. I was a military wife for over 20 years. My husband was in the Marine Corps, was a career military officer, and so that was a huge part of my life for many, many years. And soon after he retired, he died suddenly, and a few years after that, I wrote the book about Stunned by Grief, and just in an attempt to really help people understand about grief, because a lot of the difficulty with grief, other than obviously the pain that you're going through, is the fear and the immobility, really, because you don't understand what it is or what to do, or you're just immobile. And so this book really gives an inside look in the simplest terms of grief and what to do and how to get through it, and tips to really move you forward and so you don't get stuck there.
Mm-hmm. I know, Judy, some women may not have, some households are set up that the fellow does all of the bookkeeping or the wife does all of the bookkeeping. And when you said fear, that reminded me of my neighbor, because she had lost her husband at a rather young age. It was not military, but nonetheless, a loss is a loss. And she had not been sort of the prime person in her household finances. And that fear was just exacerbated with panic, not knowing the first steps of what even to do. And I'm sure you must hear that from people too. Like, I don't know where the life insurance is. I don't know who to turn to. That must be difficult to process. It
is very difficult. And yes, I've heard it certainly more than once. A lot of times, spouses discover something that they didn't expect, or they just, like you said, they haven't been involved, and so they don't know what to do. And, oftentimes we're afraid to ask for help. And, help is available, and, people that we trust and people who love us want to help. So, I would just really encourage people to seek help when something like that happens. You're not really at your best mentally at that time. A lot of times there's confusion and you're just not thinking clearly the way you normally do. And someone else can step in and really, help in a way that you're possibly not able to at that time.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's interesting you guys are talking about, like, not knowing what to do. I want to throw in that, there's so many different layers of grief. There's the grief that, you lost your person in your life, whoever that person may be. But there's also this other weird thing that I want to bring up and, get Judy's take on it. One of the things that I felt was that I felt all these weird feelings, like, I fast forwarded to my kids were little at the time when my mom died and I got divorced, but all I could think of is, oh my God, on their wedding days, my mom won't be there. Their dad, it's going to be a crisis, and he'll have his whatever wife he's on then. And, I kept going to all these different things in the future. I didn't really go to the past, and it was just all these little teeny losses that mounted up with the big loss.
It's fear, again, Sandra, because we don't know what's in the future. And we have no idea of knowing. And so we project, what if this happens? What if that happens? And, sometimes we just really have to get a hold of our head and just come back to center, and not think too far in the future and not allow our minds to keep going there, because we'll just put ourselves into a downward spiral when we do that. And we do have more control than we sometimes think we do, about our thoughts, about what, where we're going and what to do. And that's a time to really rein in those negative thoughts and those, fearful thoughts and focus on the here and now. What can I do right now? What is a small step I can take? There are always lots of good things going on in our lives at the same time that, something devastating is going on, and we tend, when that's happening, and I've done it myself, we've all done it, we tend to focus on the devastation that's going on and forget about everything else good that's going on. And sometimes we just have to remind ourselves, it's not all about the bad thing that's happening right now. There's still a lot of good, and try to focus on that and get our heads back in, in a place where, we're in a more positive state and we can move forward in a more positive direction and not be stuck there.
Did you, Judy, and I know we've asked this before, did you always journal? So was writing your book, and we've only got about a minute before the break, did you start writing your book or start writing even before your loss, or did you really go into this as a cathartic method?
I really didn't journal my entire life. And so the journaling really started when I got involved in a grief support group. That was really the beginning of it, because that was something we were encouraged to do. And it's just something that's unbelievably powerful, not just for adults, but for kids.
Oh, absolutely. And we can talk about how to approach all of this with our children, too, on the other side of the break. We're here today with Judy Brizendine, author, blogger, and speaker. Her book is Stunned by Grief. And on the other side of the break, we're going to welcome Judy Davis, the Direction Diva. She has been with us as well. She's a motivational speaker and a lifestyle blogger, a military life consultant, and co-founder of Living Thru Crisis. We're delighted to have both Judys with us today for a powerful conversation, so do stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Are you a military mom looking for help in dealing with the system? Keeping the home fires burning? Well, that's what we're here for. It's Military Mom Talk Radio with Sandra Beck and Robin Boyd. And we'll be right back after these.
If you could live your life truly standing in a place of peace, joy, and abundance, wouldn't that make your heart soar? Now you can, with Lessons in Joyful Living, with your host, Kimberly Rinaldi, Mondays at noon Central. Kimberly Rinaldi, having created a highly successful coaching practice, now teaches Lessons in Joyful Living. She believes in empowering others, and that through it, you have the ability to break through any and all barriers, thus allowing you to reach your greatest potential and joyfully step into your life's purpose. What used to take weeks, months, or even years, she can now teach you in a matter of hours with her programs. For more on Kim and her show, go to her website, KimberlyRinaldi.com. That's RINALDI.com. Then join us for Lessons in Joyful Living with your host, Kimberly Rinaldi.
This is the TogiNet Radio Network, broadcasting quality programming to the world.
Show me the money!
Okay, we will. We're going to teach you how to tell your money where to go. It's Intelligent Investing with Pam Otten on TogiNet. Learn how to be a savvy investor from someone who has your best interest at heart. Pam Otten is a financial advisor who loves to help successful business owners and entrepreneurs understand the mysteries of the investment world, and she's not afraid to share that knowledge. Pam is an unashamed Christian and qualified kingdom advisor, which means she's trained and committed to integrating biblical principles into her financial advice. Pam believes investing isn't rocket science. This is the financial advisor who's in your corner and truly understands and cares about you and helping you achieve your goals. Securities and advisory services are offered through LPL Financial, member FINRA SIPC. It's Intelligent Investing with Pam Otten on TogiNet.
We'll put a boot in your ass. It's the American way. Hey, Uncle Sam, put your name at the top of his list, and a statue of liberty started shaking.
Welcome back to Military Mom Talk Radio on TogiNet.com. Covering topics to help on the home front with help from those who know how the system works and how to work the system. It's more fun than a sale at the BX. Now let's get back to it. It's Military Mom Talk Radio. Here again are your hosts, Sandra Beck and Robin Boyd.
Hey, military moms, this is Sandra Beck and Robin Boyd, and we are talking about how to get through the holidays with loss, whether your loss is from a divorce, whether it's from a death, whether it's from a deployment, because all of those things affect our family members, and we've been visiting with Judy Brizendine, and we're about to bring in Judy Davis, so we're going to have the dueling Judys on. Judy is the Direction Diva, and she has a new book that's recently come out, Rob, so I'm excited to help her promote that. Judy, let's see. Oh, there we go. Judy Davis, are you with us?
I am. Thanks so much for having me, Sandy and Robin, and great to see you again, Judy B.
Judy B and Judy D. So, Judy Davis, would you please introduce yourself for the guests that are just joining us and didn't hear our recent broadcast? You guys can find Judy Davis by typing in Military Mom Talk Radio and Judy Davis, and it will come up. So, Judy, I'd like you to introduce yourself and talk a little bit about your book so our listeners know who they're listening to.
Okay. Well, like you said, I'm known by the military community as the Direction Diva, and I'm a motivational speaker and author and advocate for military families. My book talks about how to find your way when military life turns you upside down, kind of dealing with the emotional side of military life, helping people just deal and navigate that stress and the chaos and the challenges that we deal with on a regular day-to-day basis. So that's what the book is about, and I advocate a lot for our teen community in suicide awareness, suicide ideation, depression, and addiction, and helping families understand what the key things to look out for in their children are. And I love the topic we're talking about today in the holidays. It seems like that's a big stressor for a lot of families.
It certainly is. And Judy, could you give the name of your book again, just because I want people to be sure to know that it's hot on the bookshelves?
Yes, it's called Right Side Up, Find Your Way When Military Life Turns You Upside Down. And you can get it at militaryfamilybooks.com or on Amazon.
Oh, wonderful. Mm-hmm. And was this a product of all of the things that you've been hearing from people during your tour and the people that you've met during your speaking engagements, or was this really something that had been brewing in you for quite a while?
No, it actually came out from me doing everything wrong when we came back in the military. My husband, after a 19-year break in service, decided to come back in, and I thought, as a spouse of, we had been married for 17 years, we had teenage children, and I thought military life would just be this cakewalk because I had walked the walk and had raised my kids, kind of a thing, and boy, did I learn a lot of new lessons. So, the book is really about all the things that I needed, the tools and coping strategies that helped me get through those first years. And even now, I use them every day, depending on what we're facing as a military family. And it's a roller coaster ride that we go through. And I love that my book can be a toolbox that people can refer back to over and over, no matter if they are a new spouse or a veteran spouse. There's something in there that can help you get through a challenge.
Yeah, it is a challenge. And like you say, I think stress is probably the one thing that we all deal with differently, but yet we all have to face it and find the best way to get through. So I guess one of the best things is to hear how some of the strategies you have in dealing with that stress is so important, especially during deployments. And then during reintegration, there's that stress of having to readjust all of the things that you just got used to.
Exactly. And it's, we have to put on so many different hats. That's the thing that I hear from families all the time. It's like the minute that they think that they have a certain situation kind of under their belt and they know how to deal with it, something new comes up and flips them over, and literally turns them upside down. And it's like starting over again with needing those new reference tools. And this life it's bumpy, and you get your bumps and bruises and things like that. And I think that, when we talk about resiliency, it's really about being flexible and being able to find and seek out new ways to handle situations that this time might be just a little bit different. Even though you've been through deployment before, you've been through reintegration, you're not the same person you were back then. You have different skills. Your children are at different ages. Your support system is a different support system. So you have to be flexible in in the way you handle things. And I think that's hard. I think that's what makes it so hard.
Judy Brizendine, I would like you to weigh in.
Well, I think resilience is of key importance because, we tend to get into a mindset of doing things the way we've always done them, seeing things from the perspective we always have. And if we can just tweak our mind a little bit and open up to looking at things in a new way, being open to, most of the time we're not really, we don't really necessarily embrace change all that much. We like to, get into our pattern that's easy and that we are familiar with, but we can't always do that. And if we can, just try to see things from a different perspective and be open to change, because anytime there's a loss, regardless of what kind of loss it is, change is involved. And there's, we have to, over time, adapt to that change. And so we have to change. And if we can just get to a place where we can embrace that a little more instead of, fighting it, it will make those transitions so much easier.
I definitely agree with that, Judy. I think that, accepting that change is just part of the lifestyle is like the first step. And then it's all about regrouping. And just, getting access to those things that we can use to shift and change. And I call that process the ARA process. It's like the accept, regroup, and then approach it again. There's no one way. There's no one way to deal with things. It's really about just regrouping and attacking it from a different angle until you find the fit that works for you and your family.
I totally agree.
Well, and I think, you guys, when you have multiple changes, like I want to talk about the compounded aspect of it because, Judy, you talk a lot about compound grief. And, I would like you to give an example of what compound grief is and how that's kind of even exponentially multiplied over the holidays. Because I used to cry and fall apart, and I had no idea why I was crying and falling apart.
Are you speaking?
So I'm sorry, Judy Brizendine, because you talk about compound grief in your book. I'm sorry.
Right. No. Oftentimes there is more than one loss going on at a time, and when that happens, it could be a change in your circumstance, the loss of someone you love, just any kind of a loss. And when these things happen in multiples, it just really explodes, I guess, that whole grieving process, because you're already going in a million different directions. Your mind is, you're being triggered, your emotions are, by all kinds of different things. You don't really have a handle on where you are because there's a lot of confusion. When multiple things are taking place, it just kind of amps up that whole process. So just to be aware, sometimes we're not even aware. Maybe we think of the obvious things, like, if someone has died, or, the really obvious things, but there may be something less obvious that is a loss that you're facing too, and you might not even at first thought identify that, but, stop and think about what you're going through and where the triggers may be coming from, and that may help you to be able to face it in a more direct way.
Exactly. Judy B, as military families, we often, people look at our lives and think that things are so different, and they are to an extent, but we have this foundation that is very similar to our civilian counterparts that we build our life upon. And, when we're talking about compounded grief or compounded situations or experiences, it's built on this foundation that is cracked because of everything that goes on. Every deployment, every separation, every PCS, there's grief associated with it. And, so it puts these little cracks into our foundation that makes it difficult for us to move forward. And so often, like Judy Brizendine was just saying, what we're dealing with today and how we feel about it, oftentimes it's like reverting back to that, all those experiences that cause those same exact feelings, and they all come rushing forward, creating this intense experience that we're facing now that in our brains shouldn't be so bad, but because of the compound effect of everything that we've been dealing with over time, it becomes more challenging to deal with.
Judy, we're going to need to take a commercial break. And on the other side of the break, I'd like to both focus on a couple of steps that are going to help us through, whether it be making sure we find journaling or setting short-term goals, or some of the things that are good tools that we can get ourselves through whatever it is that's keeping us from moving forward. Judy Brizendine and Judy Davis are our guests. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Are you a military mom looking for help in dealing with the system? Keeping the home fires burning? Well, that's what we're here for. It's Military Mom Talk Radio with Sandra Beck and Robin Boyd. And we'll be right back after these.
In today's business world, a helping hand or idea that doesn't come with an invoice is a treasured find. And if that happens to you, then you need to pay it forward to keep other entrepreneurs from making mistakes or getting a raw deal. It's called Paying It Forward with Josephine Girassi, Wednesday mornings at 9 a.m. Central. Josephine is going to have the guests describe their accomplishments, the lessons they've learned, both good and bad, and then sharing those pieces of knowledge as we create a movement of paying it forward. For more information about Josephine, her business, and background, you can go to mymomknowsbest.com. Josephine Girassi has always been a problem solver. She saw this need and has turned it into a movement. It's Paying It Forward, with tips, tools, and advice and hard lessons learned. These pieces of knowledge can make a huge difference for you, your business, and others. So join us for Paying It Forward with Josephine Girassi, Wednesday mornings at 10 a.m., 9 a.m. Central on TogiNet.com.
Everybody.
Reaching out from the heartland of the United States with quality programming, this is TogiNet Radio.
This is Buzz Local Radio. We have the 3 topics here, and we just added a 4th. We just started talking about hot dogs.
Yes. Yep, I'm in a band.
He's in a band. We both had guitars, so I went over to his house Christmas Day day.
We had to start a band.
And I think we wrote 4 or 5 songs that afternoon.
And Cannibalistic Fish was one of them.
Cannibalistic Fish.
I couldn't do the dreads. My mom would not let me wear my pants backwards to school either. That was wiggity whack. Yeah.
Buzz Local Radio, available for free download on toginet.com. That's TOGINET.com.
'Cause there ain't no doubt I love this land. God bless the USA.
Welcome back to Military Mom Talk Radio on toginet.com. Covering topics to help on the home front with help from those who know how the system works and how to work the system. It's more fun than a sale at the BX. Now let's get back to it. It's Military Mom Talk Radio. Here again are your hosts, Sandra Beck and Robin Boyd.
Hey ladies, this is Sandra Beck and I'm here with Robin Boyd, and this is Military Mom Talk Radio, and we are visiting with the dueling Judys. We have Judy Brizendine and Judy Davis, and we are talking about how to navigate the holidays, especially with respect to grief and change. And grief can come from divorce, from death, from deployment. There's a whole lot of reasons to grieve. And to have to adjust to changes for the holidays that we may not be accustomed to. And I think it's very hard, you guys, especially when you have deep-seated traditions. I know in my house, I come from an immigrant household, German and Ukrainian on, each side, and we have very, very solid traditions that have been carried down for generations. And when those things can't happen, there's a little bit of a adjustment, an upset, a railing against the what is. And, it's all well and good to talk about long-term solutions for these things, that things get better with time. We hear that thing over and over. But when we think about, what can we do today to change our mindset, to change our expectations, because I think that's what it's all about. A lot of this is about expectations. So I'm going to go to Judy Davis first to talk about, what are some short-term things we can do to help us get through the holidays?
Well, I think you hit it on the head. I think that, we need to understand that when we're dealing with a situation that is, based in grief, whether it's deployment or death or, just a difference in our life circumstance, we need to allow ourselves to understand that it's okay to change tradition. And that doesn't mean that our holidays won't be good. Like you said, we're so steeped in tradition that sometimes we feel if we don't follow through on those things, we won't have a good holiday, or it's not as good as it should be. So first is just to allow yourself to be flexible and allow yourself to be okay that things might be different. And I think that the best way to do that, what I see has worked so well with a lot of families that I talk to and work with, is to plan out this holiday season like you're starting with a clean slate. Sit your kids down, especially if your spouse is deployed or something, and sit your kids down and say, hey, listen, this year is going to be different. And we want to do something that makes us walk away knowing that we had a wonderful holiday season and we were together and we got the meaning of it, however what that works for your family. And then ask everybody, what are the 2 things that you must have happen for the holiday season to feel good? And we did this on my husband's last deployment, and I was shocked at the things that my kids said. I expected them to say, big presents and going out with dad doing this and this and this. And it was making cookies together. It was driving around for lights, looking at all the different lights. There were a lot of different traditions that I didn't think were so key because I thought it was different. So when I asked my kids, so that would be the key that I would say, ask your children what are the 2 things they want and be open to changing everything, because it will be different, and the more you're okay with different, the more your kids will be.
I know I've heard more and more families do something intentionally different every year and have the kids be a part of that new thing, that something new. And it could be that you never do have a serious loss in your lives, but it helps the kids look forward to something new. And when tradition does have to change, that's not a horrible thing. That is something that they can embrace a lot more easily.
Yes, I agree.
Judy Brizendine, do you feel that we are our biggest ones to hold guilt over our heads, and we're probably our biggest barrier?
I think that's absolutely true. Absolutely true. We're harder on ourselves, I think, than anybody is on us, and we tend to buy into those guilt feelings for whatever reason. I would say abandon that, let go of those guilt feelings. I totally agree with what Judy said. One thing that's really important is to plan ahead. Don't just leave plans up in the air thinking that, something will materialize that's going to make everything all right when the time comes. Do intentionally plan ahead. And these don't have to be elaborate plans, but just make some plans with your family. Don't isolate yourself. It's really tempting sometimes when we're going through a really difficult time with grief to isolate. And, you don't have to be around a ton of people, but be sure that you make plans to be with someone that you want to be with, that someone who is going to nurture you, and it will be a good time together. So don't allow yourself to be by yourself. But the thing about traditions, we all have traditions that we hold dear. Just because we change things this year, a lot of things, or we abandon some of those traditions that we love, doesn't mean that we can't pull some of those things back in the future. But I think it's so important to think outside the box. And, it was one of the things that really got me through the first Thanksgiving and Christmas, by just deciding to do something entirely different. And it made such a difference in the life of my family that Christmas. So I would say just, try to think outside the box and do get into the mindset of it's okay to change, and, give yourself something to really look forward to that is different for a change.
Right. And I think so, and to add to what Judy's saying, is I think that so often the holidays bring with it an anxiety sometimes about certain events or certain family situations or things like that. And I would just encourage people to not be afraid to be a little bit, not to put yourself as a priority, put you and your children or you and your spouse as a priority during the holiday season. And, stand your ground, decline invitations, or, embrace unique opportunities. Think about who you're going to be with. Like Judy said, plan, especially if you're talking about reintegration or, anything like that. It's not about just winging it. Stand your ground about what it is you need as a family unit, and you will be happier no matter what changing situation comes in and out each year.
Well, and I think, don't you think, girls, that it's better to tell people, I know there were a couple times, there was a New Year's thing that I couldn't do it. I had agreed to do it. I said I would go, and I called up and canceled at the last minute. And that was actually better for me to just cancel and let my friends know, I'm not up to it, even though they kind of were like, come on, you really need it. But the fact was, I really didn't need it. I knew myself, and that to say no kept me from forcing myself the whole evening, and then all my friends would know that I was forcing it. So you're actually doing everybody a favor by backing out, even if it's at the last minute.
Well, just to tag onto that a little bit, I would say remove as much pressure as you possibly can. And if that means saying no to certain things, you know what's best for you and your family, and a lot of times we kind of get pulled into things that we really don't want to do, or it's just not right for that time. So whatever you have to do is to remove as much pressure as you can. I say do it, and it will make your holiday that much easier to handle and more pleasant.
Mm-hmm. And I see so often. Oh, I'm sorry. Go on.
No, I was just going to say we had 3 minutes before the break, and I was going to ask Judy Davis, are you a proponent of making lists, like a to-do list for the day, as opposed to looking at a huge task that might be, even if it's the holiday season or looking at a 6-month period? Is that something that you find helpful?
I do. I think that the best thing to do is, everything that I experience in a day, it can be looked at as a mountain. I look at laundry. I look at, writing my book. There's things like that. And one thing that I've learned over time and through experience is that, nothing happens all at once. It's one thing at a time. I don't tackle my massive amount of doing my website as one. I talk about each individual thing. I break it down into doable pieces that I'm willing and able to do, because things get accomplished one moment, one thing at a time. So I am all about making those lists and taking something that feels so monumental and breaking it down into small enough pieces that you can really do and give yourself a feeling of accomplishment.
Yeah.
When you're talking about Christmas, it can be something I write down, Christmas dinner, morning brunch, presents, all those kind of things. And I can look at each one individually and say, does this work in my life, or can I get rid of it? Or can I just get it done? It helps me think things through a little bit clearer, which takes the stress away.
Right. And
I just want to chime in really quick, Rob.
Yeah.
Some days it's just, I got up, I got dressed, I got showered, and you know what? And there are those days, like I'm always the one that gives you guys like the worst case scenario, because I feel like I'm worst case Sam over here, or train wreck Beck. But there are some days when just getting up and getting dressed is an accomplishment, and I just wanted to put that out there.
Exactly.
You're absolutely right. Yeah. And I think that's where the beginning of your inner strength comes, is for feeling that accomplishment rather than saying, oh my gosh, I did not get this task done. But if you have a portion of it as your goal for a day, that's the most important thing, because once you start feeling stronger, then you can accomplish the things that you need to, but you can also accomplish your own happiness, and that's the ultimate goal. We're with Judy Brizendine today. You can find out more about Judy Brizendine at www.suddenly.Because.com. And Judy Davis, you can find more about her at Direction Diva.com. Back in a moment.
Are you a military mom looking for help in dealing with the system? Keeping the home fires burning? Well, that's what we're here for. It's Military Mom Talk Radio with Sandra Beck and Robin Boyd. And we'll be right back after these.
Have you heard? The pages of American Patchwork and Quilting magazine come to life on our new weekly online radio show, American Patchwork and Quilting. Join Pat Sloan, our blogging and quilt designer host, as she talks about the latest trends, ideas, and inspirations. Her guests include quilt pattern designers, authors, quilt shop owners, and our editors, all quilters, just like you. Call in with your questions. Get quilting tips from industry experts. Learn about free patterns. Hear behind-the-scenes stories from our magazines, American Patchwork and Quilting, Quilt Sampler, and Quilts and More. Get the scoop on free stuff and find out more about the best independent quilt shops in North America. To listen to a live show, tune in Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern. Just log on to allpeoplequilt.com/radio. To hear past shows, go to iTunes and search for American Patchwork and Quilting Radio. We hope you'll join us, because we know that quilting changes everything.
This is the TogiNet Radio Network, radio with a cutting edge.
We often ask, is that all there is? Why is this happening to me? Why am I always broke? How am I going to survive this mess? Then join Dr. Geraldine Tegeloff for Nature Spirit Speak, 7 p.m. Tuesday evenings on toginet.com. Geraldine is a metaphysician, nature intuitive, and prosperity coach who shares with you how she went from totally broke to living what she would call her perfectly prosperous life. Through the combination of a wealth of metaphysical knowledge and her amazing ability as an intuitive, Geraldine brings to you the secrets of her magical journey of healing emotionally, spiritually, and financially. As with the ancient seers and master teachers, Geraldine has a unique gift of being able to connect to the simple yet profound messages brought to us by Mother Nature, and happily shares these through today's note to self on her webpage, naturespiritspeak.com. If you need help with your journey, why not connect with Geraldine during her show, Nature Spirit Speak, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Central on toginet.com.
We'll put a boot in your ass, it's the American way. Hey, Uncle Sam, put your name at the top of his list, and a statue of liberty started shaking.
Welcome back to Military Mom Talk Radio on toginet.com. Covering topics to help on the home front with help from those who know how the system works and how to work the system. It's more fun than a sale at the BX. Now let's get back to it. It's Military Mom Talk Radio. Here again are your hosts, Sandra Beck and Robin Boyd.
Hey, military moms, this is Sandra Beck, and I'm here with Robin Boyd, and we are visiting today with the dueling Judys, Judy Davis and Judy Brizendine, both accomplished women, experts in their fields, authors, so you can look up their books, Judy Davis and Judy Brizendine. You can look them up on Amazon or just type their name in to Google, and you'll see that there's journals and a grief book and a Direction Diva book. I mean, they're so great for the military family. Judy D, what's the upside down book title?
Right Side Up.
Right Side Up.
Just look for the picture of the girl doing a cartwheel on the front. You'll find it.
That's what I always think of the cover, and I'm like, she's upside down. So I'm like, it's the upside down book. But, you know, it's just me being me. But speaking of me being me, I would like this segment to be about me. No, I'm just kidding. I'd like it to be about our best practices. So I guess it is in a way somewhat about me. And I'm going to talk about my best practices for me personally. I know we touched a little bit on this, but I'd like to hear from my co-host Robin. I'd like to hear from the dueling Judys some real day-to-day best practices in getting through. And I'm going to share mine first. I'm a big old crier. Like, I can cry at a commercial. And so one of the things that was hard for me with respect to death and divorce that I was handling at the same time was crying. And I would cry at inopportune moments, and I'd cry at opportune moments. And you know what? That was okay, because recently I saw my friend Katrine, who lost her uncle, who was like a father to her. And we were at choir, the kids' choir practice, and she just lost it because we were singing Angels We Have Heard on High, and she was shaking and sobbing. And I realized that happened to me during a similar song in church, where I just lost it completely. And, you know, I didn't know what else to do, so I just told my kids, well, look, Mom's really sad. She misses Grandma. And when they sang, like, Gloria, it's her name, and that just set me off, kids. And this is what you do when you grieve. You can cry, and it's okay, and, you know, the world doesn't fall apart. And when I saw my friend Katrine, I, like, ran over, I gave her a big old hug, and I let her cry. I didn't tell her to get it together. I didn't tell her it was time to get over it. You know, all those dumb things that people say to us when we're grieving. But my best practice, I know this sounds silly, but was to cry until you can't cry anymore. And I cried in the bathtub, I cried in the shower, I cried in the car, I cried in the grocery store, I cried in the park. I mean, I had this thing where I walked every day, and it was like my own personal trail of tears. But I would put on some music, and I would just let it all pour out. Because when you grieve, lots of other grieving things come up, and we talked a little bit about compound grief But that my advice to everybody is to take that time to really cry and really feel sad and sit with your sadness, because eventually it kind of dissipates over time. You're still going to get sad, but you got to feel these things. And if you don't feel them, my advice is to cry until you can't cry anymore. Okay, so Rob, I'm going to go to you.
I think you're right, because then you have more control, I think, as time goes on. My best practice, and I'm referring back to when I was going through cancer, was to utilize those lists that we talked about in the last segment, but make it so that I had my go-to list. And I think so many times people will give you a hug when you know that you've just experienced some kind of loss, and they'll say, let me know what I can do. Well, I had that list right on my refrigerator, and I would put their name down and say, Rita told me she would bake supper on Thursday, and Mary said she would pick up the kids on Mondays and Fridays. And I would keep a list of who offered me what and take them up on it without guilt and say, thank you so much for offering to pick up the kids next Friday. Would you be available? And then I would keep it on the fridge, because I wouldn't want to call her every Friday, but I'd want to be able to rotate so that I wasn't overburdening my friends so they'd be sick every time they saw my phone come up on their ID. But I also wanted to let them help me, because I think that's the worst thing, is the awkwardness that people have when you're going through a challenge in your life and they don't quite know how to help. So enable them, and by enabling them to give you that hand, they in turn are going to speak more freely. You're going to feel less pressure because you can handle the other things that may take a little more of your guts that are going to need to get going through whatever else you've got to do. Let's go to Judy Davis.
My best practice is a little bit opposite to that.
Is that true?
Yeah, I get in my car and I get quiet. I find that when life is stressful and chaotic and crazy and sad and everything, that I always am going. It's like I get on this roller coaster and I can't stop. So what I find is that car rides with nobody with me, no radio on, and just getting in the car and going is like a bit of like meditation. And it rejuvenates me, it relaxes me and focuses me. It lets me just get away from everything and listen and find that balance that I'm seeking. So it's when things get crazy, I get quiet. And, it's almost like, driving Miss Judy thing. And, my family always knows when I'm having a tough time. They'll even say to me, Mom, why don't you go take a drive? And just that getting away and being alone with my thoughts. And sometimes it ends up that I have to pull over and just cry on the side of the road. Sometimes I laugh hysterically at myself. But it's just giving myself that space just to be me is so helpful. Well, that's my best practice. What about you, Judy?
Well, as far as the holidays in particular, mine is to know that I have to manage the holidays or they will control me. And that's true when you're grieving. It's true just in general. Take control or you'll be taken control of, and you may be going down a road that you don't want to go down. And just to tag on to what you said, allow yourself to feel those feelings, whatever they are. So often we try to be so stoic and, stiff upper lip and all that. Give yourself those times to feel those feelings. And if it happens, and it does to all of us at an inopportune time, just like you and like so many of us, we come to accept that it's okay. That's who we are, that's what we're feeling, and it's okay to express that. And I would just say simplify, because we expect so much of ourselves, and we think that we have to be this super woman, super mom, super, and do everything. We can't, and we don't have to. Just allow yourself to let go of that and simplify things so that you and your family can enjoy the holidays more without feeling the pressure.
Mm-hmm. That pressure, there's that pressure that we put on ourselves. And I think it's true. Once you give yourself that freedom, and as Judy Davis is saying, maybe you do need to just, if it's a walk outside, if it's a drive in the car, sometimes if you have to go to the pharmacy, you take the next exit off the highway and go the long way back because you just need those extra few minutes. I used to actually do that with my kids. I would take, not a wrong turn, but I would take a different way and just give us a little extra time in the car. Of course, nowadays we all have cell phones, but you turn that cell phone off for 45 minutes and you just spend that extra time. Maybe it is just driving the wrong way, quote unquote, just because you need to get away from what was being held over your head in the house.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's kind of like the computer, giving yourself a chance to reboot.
Yeah.
You know, just stop, pause, and, take that time and reboot and get, settle down, get back on track, and, give yourself a little bit of space.
And don't let other people dictate how you should be handling whatever situation you're in.
Yeah.
We don't give ourselves enough credit or stand our ground oftentimes, and that can be a source of strength when we're going through something. We often let other people's ideas of how we should handle things or what we should do. I mean, I think back to the very first deployment when my husband was going to be away from the holidays. Both my family and my husband's family had decided how we should spend the holidays with them, and what I should be doing with my kids because he was going to be gone. And, I had to put my foot down and do some things that were boundaries for our family, but it would be really easy to get sucked into what other people want you to do or think is best for you. So just like I think Judy said it earlier in the show, really plan and know what it is that you want out of your holiday season, and then stand your ground and just take it and enjoy what it is, even if it's changed from what is typical in your family and your traditions.
Yeah, and I think that is so hard for us that's probably the worst, isn't it, is standing up to our family as opposed to the neighbors down the way. You can say to your neighbor, gee, no, I'm not going to do that or whatever, but when you've got your mother-in-law or your father saying something to you, that's always the hardest. We are going to have to wrap this hour up, and it's been a wonderful hour, ladies. Judy Davis, the Direction Diva. You can find out more about her and also look for her new book, Right Side Up, at thedirectiondiva.com. You can find her book on Amazon, and her last name is Davis, just like it sounds. Judy Brizendine, we thank you so much for your time. Brizendine is spelled Brizendine. You can find out more about that, Judy, on suddenly.Because, and we do encourage you to look for her book and companion journal, Stunned by Grief. Ladies, thank you for a wonderful hour. We appreciate your time, and we look forward to hearing from all of you and seeing you all next week. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.